première.
Good evening, all. In this video, we're going to take a brief look at the arguably unexpected crowd favorite from this year's 24 Hours of Le Mans, the Garage 56 innovative car entry, the NASCAR Next Gen Camaro. In addition to making by far the best sound of any car that ran this year's race, I'd in fact go so far as to argue that the only proper sounding race cars this year were the General Motors entries. Ooh, controversial, despite my disdain for most of their road car products. The base next-gen NASCAR is the 7th generation of vehicle intended for competition in the NASCAR series, building on the success of the Gen 6 car with improved aerodynamics and nominally lower costs, with the intent of increasing manufacturer interest in the sport. That being said, it's worth calling out that all NASCAR vehicles are actually the same underneath, hence the stock part of stock car racing, with some vaguely manufacturer-specific bodywork and stickers in place of any overly heavy, unnecessary bits like headlamps. Now, for the vehicle entered at Le Mans this year, the need for such things is just a touch more important, as the race does last rather longer than the couple hours of a NASCAR event, and the entirety of the Circuit de la Sarthe is not illuminated by stadium lamps
with the power of 1,000,000 candles.
So the Garage 56 entry actually has these things, featuring enhanced aerodynamics, bodywork that rather resembles the current generation Camaro, proper working headlamps, but still carries a modified version of Chevy's interpretation of the next-gen car's 5.86-liter cast-iron naturally aspirated V8, Goodyear tires wrapped around BBS wheels, and X-Track 5-speed sequential gearbox. The engine reportedly puts out somewhere in the neighborhood of 670 horsepower, which puts it on par with most of the prototypes. But of course, LMDH and LMH cars are featherweights compared to the almost 3,000 pounds or 1,350 kilograms dry weight of the Garage 56 car. As with some of the LMDH and LMH cars, Dallara was responsible for building the chassis, although in this instance it's a steel tube space frame rather than a carbon tub. The chassis is at least partially modular, with the front and rear substructures able to be easily swapped after any inevitable racing incidents. Öhlins provides the 4-way adjustable dampers, which help smooth out road surfaces along with new aluminum control arms. Interestingly, it wasn't until this newest generation of NASCAR that they entered the 20th century and moved away from a solid rear axle and recirculating ball steering. Essentially, this means that the modern NASCAR is finally actually designed for racing on more than just ovals, and hence the Garage 56 project. The origins of this effort, however, go back to the 1970s, when the then president of NASCAR, Bill France Jr., made a deal with the ACO to bring 2 contemporaneous stock cars to Le Mans in 1976. The 2 vehicles entered were a Ford Torino and a Dodge Charger, but unfortunately the Dodge lasted less than a lap. Its pistons burnt out because of the lower quality fuel used in European racing at the time, which also actually plays in the story of the Lola T70. Go watch that video if you haven't. And the Torino withdrew after a transmission failure at the literal 11th hour. But the mark was made, and some would argue it was inevitable that NASCAR would someday return to Le Mans. Garage 56, on the other hand, is a more recent addition to the 24-hour lineup. First created in 2012 to host Dan Gurney and Don Panos' controversial Nissan Delta Wing, which more than deserves its own video once I can find one racing somewhere to take pictures of it, the Garage 56 program has accepted innovative and unusual entries that pioneer new technologies or applications, such as an all-electric car based on the Delta Wing in 2014, an LMP2 designed to be drivable by quadruple amputees in 2016 and 2021, and several false start attempts at hydrogen and methane-powered vehicles. Maybe they'll get around to it one day, but for the time being, I'd be more than happy just to see the Camaro pounding around the Circuit de la Sarthe year after year with incremental improvements as needed. And indeed, the Le Mans outing was largely a success. Announced at the 2022 12 Hours of Sebring, work commenced as a collaborative effort between Chevrolet, Hendricks Motorsports, the winningest team in NASCAR, and Goodyear. It was not the easiest of roads, including extensive testing and re-engineering of components to last more than the 4 times as long as a standard NASCAR race, as well as some rather significant noise made by Toyota about not being chosen as a partner. Toyota being one of the three current manufacturers, such as they are, racing in NASCAR. One would think that 5 consecutive victories at Le Sarthe would be sufficient, but by the time race week dawned, the next-gen Camaro was ready to race, with a driver lineup consisting of many-time NASCAR champion Jimmy Johnson, thank heavens they got him out of IndyCar, former Formula One world champion Jenson Button, and former Audi factory driver and race winner Mike Rockenfeller. Though initially targeting competitivity with the GTE cars on track, test day and free practice revealed that they were just a scooch faster, and by scooch I mean a whole damn lot. The car ended up out-qualifying every GTE car on the grid, and despite being around 10 miles an hour slower on the straights, was occasionally nipping at the heels of the slower LMP2s and the twisty bits. And they say stock cars can't do anything except turn left. Race day itself also, for a new vehicle, went pretty well. In a consistent lead on the GTE field until the 18-hour mark, and in spite of more complicated pit stops necessitated by the lack of an air jack system, the team lost significant time installing new brakes, and still further time to execute significant repairs to the transmission shortly thereafter. Nonetheless, they were able to get the car going again and finished 39th overall, which, while second to last for all the finishers, was still further along than the 22 vehicles that retired, the most since 2015, and many of them veteran teams of many Le Mans and many Le Mans victories. Whether we will see the Garage 56 Camaro again, well, that remains to be seen. Some say it can only be summoned by playing Fortunate Son loudly in a French cafe, and that it's secretly fueled by Miller Lite. All we know is, it's called the NASCAR. And on that bland shell, we come to the end of another video. As always, I hope you enjoyed it, and will join me again next week for another video. And for this week's call to action, not featuring the 3 sacred words of YouTube,
like, comment, subscribe.
I'm going to be selfish this week and ask for not your likes, comments, or subscriptions, but rather for goodwill, or thoughts and prayers, or good vibes, or whichever form of positive universal encouragement that you may subscribe to, as, well, by the time you listen to this, I will have had rather an important job interview for a new job that I would like, but at the time of recording and writing, it's still upcoming, so I've been unemployed the last month after getting laid off, and, well, my financial situation is quite strong, and I could easily spend a year between jobs. I like working and would very much like to work for this company. So, yeah, impel the karmic and cosmic powers in my favor, please. Have a good evening, all.